Okay, good. Um, Hello, Coach Tony here for a Q&A with Coach Jeff Fajans. Jeff, thank you so much for being here. I think of you a number of ways as a business coach, as a creativity coach, as someone who's studied with the author of Flow, and sometimes I'll come to you with questions about that topic. But maybe we could just start by hearing your story. How did you get into coaching?
Yeah, sure. So I think like a lot of the coaches that are on Coach Me, I kind of stumbled across it, but it was always been kind of a part of my life in different facets, but I never really was a coach, although I was doing coaching in a lot of different types of roles previously. So kind of going back, I'm a musician. Kind of my first coaching experience was giving guitar lessons to other people and coaching them, building their skills on guitar, and also kind of helping them with their own creativity on the instrument and developing their own style. So that was kind of the inception of my coaching, if you will. But then in terms of my profession, I'm in the talent and organization development field. So that's it's basically coaching and consulting to organizations and teams and leaders. So that I do have a day job, and that's what I do basically during the day. And then how I got into Coach Me, I think I was on Lyft for a bit. I was just kind of exploring that. I think I might have heard about it initially through Tim Ferriss or some podcast I was listening to. I thought it was a great idea. At the time, I was very into quantified self stuff. So I was tracking a lot of data on my own health and sleep and creativity and just whatever. I was super hardcore into the quantified self movement. So I thought, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then I remember kind of the rebrand and refocus, the pivot into Coach Me. And I was like, wow, that's a really kind of unique coaching model. That's really innovative. I need to experience how this is, because at the time I always knew that someday, didn't know when, like I would be a coach somehow. I knew that was part of my future career trajectory, and that's something I really enjoyed doing and was passionate about. So got involved with that. Kendra Kinnison was my first coach, and I thought it was a great experience. And I was just fascinated by Coach Me in general. And then I can't remember exactly how we kind of opened it up to apply for coaches, but I was like, oh man, I'm going to do this right away. And got into Coach Me platform, started coaching people. I was curious. I was kind of skeptical at first. I was like, can I really help people in this chat-based kind of coaching technique? I was very curious to see how things would work out, but then started making, impact on people's lives, and just got more and more addicting and meaningful and fun. And so I just kind of kept going with it, and it's been a really meaningful part of my life. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we're just going to go round robin. People are going to ask you questions, including me. And why don't we start with Michelle? Did you come with the question today?
Yes. So you mentioned music. Now, is that what you coach, or what are the things that you do coach on?
Yeah. So I've worked with musicians in some of my creativity coaching, but my coaching kind of revolves around three or maybe two, how you look at it, primary endeavors. So one, and how I got started was kind of positioning myself as a creativity coach. And that involved it's not really necessarily about generating new ideas, but a lot of creatives like musicians or writers or people that wanted to add more creativity in terms of a side project or kind of shift careers. They would come to me for coaching on how to bring their creativity to life, if you will. And a lot of that involves like prioritization, focus, time management, creating systems and creating space to be creative and make progress on those creative goals. It's not necessarily music specific, and I'm not coaching anyone on how to be a better guitar player or write better songs. But that is one area, is just kind of coaching for creativity and helping people bring their ideas to life and develop their ideas and make progress and actually finish and complete what they're working on. Like it could be a song, it could be something they're writing, it could be another side project that they're working on, trying to create a new business or side hustle. And then two, and I've been doing more, it's been more of my focus lately is on leadership for creatives. So I would work with leaders in organizations, or they might be a startup leader, a startup founder who is looking to not only kind of get really dialed in on their prioritization and focus and like self-leadership and self-management, but also more expanded to how do they coach and develop their teams and create a culture that brings about creativity and flow, and how do they lead change and influence others. So the leadership one's more self and other oriented, kind of it's a little bit more complex in terms of like a system, but also coach people just on their own creativity.
Great, thank you.
Wonderful. Glenn, to you.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question to that. Part of the purpose of this is to find out what kind of clients would be best to refer to you. So do you have any particular philosophies or programs that you take people through that, what would somebody be able to expect if they were coaching with you?
Sure. So for leaders, leading creative teams or whatnot, so those people might be like marketing directors, new product directors. They could just be leading teams of creatives, like maybe they lead a team of creative directors or art directors, or maybe a cross-functional team trying to bring a new organizational initiative to life. So that program is, it's not like it's very customized per person based on what their challenge is, but typically it will involve kind of a look and discovery around kind of their self-leadership. Can you hear me?
Yep. Your face is frozen. Hello? But I can hear your voice. Uh-oh. Now I can't. Oops. There.
You're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know exactly when I dropped off, but yeah, so one group of people, or what was the last thing you heard?
Teams of
creatives. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of the leadership focus, it does kind of start like an inside out approach. So a lot of it is dialing in on what kind of impact the leader is trying to make, what their strengths are, where the opportunities to develop are, like where are the most pressing needs for their development and what are they trying to achieve. But then there's always some element of, leading others. Like how do they become more effective leaders of other people? So it is, how do you get dialed in on your own process and systems and philosophy and just prioritization, but also how do you lead and inspire, kind of activate the creativity of others around you. So that would be a key like client to refer to me, just a leader, director, manager in any organization where creativity is a goal, or innovation is a goal. And then on the other side, just kind of the more individual creativity coaches. Oh, hey, Kat. That would be, those people are usually looking to create more space and build momentum on these creative projects of theirs that they just can't seem to make progress on or finish, right? They have the idea, like they might be trying to write an album or finish a novel or build whatever kind of business, but they're having trouble with their time and attention, like creating a system or creating the time or the goals, breaking goals down to create that progress. They're generally feeling stuck. They have something they want to bring to the world, but they're having trouble with their time and attention, like creating a system or creating the time or the goals, breaking goals down to create that progress. They're generally feeling stuck. They have something they want to bring to the world, that they really are engaged with and excited about, but they're probably frustrated at their progress. They're doubting themselves. They're not sure if they'll ever finish it. So that would be another kind of client.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
So on the leadership side, I feel like part of your background that we haven't gotten to yet is in organizational design. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So organizational design is basically, and this would be something would help people work through. It's a very broad subject, but it can involve like the strategy or vision and the mission of the team, like defining that. It can involve actually building the team and designing the role, kind of create an effective collaborative team. It could also involve just leadership development in general. And also just like the structure, like is the structure of your team,
We heard you I might have to go back and edit this a little bit. That'll be okay. So far, I've been able to just upload them. Gwen, I'm still stuck in our conversation from earlier in the day.
Oh.
I was so charged up by that. I was imagining what it would be like to... Okay, and we're back.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Sorry about that. My internet's being a little weird. But yeah, org design is basically how do you think, like what is your setup or your structure or your systems or processes on your team or your group, are they in alignment with, or are they facilitating what you're trying to achieve as a team or a group? And kind of looking at those elements and then diagnosing it and then maybe tweaking it so it's more optimal to achieve whatever the team is trying to achieve. So it's kind of like what the coaches do, diagnosing an individual, like what are you trying to achieve, what's working, what's not working, how do we fix it, what's the root problem here. But it's just that kind of an organizational or group level.
Was there some focus to the organizational design program that you went through that makes it different than other organizational design programs?
Yeah. So the program I was involved with is a positive organizational psychology program. And that's how I got experience with Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and he was one of the main professors there, author of Flow. So that lens is it's about like how do you take organizations and groups from good to great. I'm going to turn my video off for just 1 second. I think I'm frozen.
You're frozen, you are, but we are hearing you fine. And you always get frozen in a funny, with a funny expression.
You're on mute.
Hello.
Okay.
I'm gonna switch rooms and see if that might help my internet connection. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, so it was a positive organizational psychology focus. And so there was more emphasis on, it's more of like, how do you take people and organizations from good to great versus from bad to normal or average.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an emphasis on creativity and flow and meaning and work at work. So it's an employee engagement, things like that. So it's kind of through the lens of how do you make work a great experience for people, something that they're excited and engaged with, and not,
right,
just so.
Right. Awesome. Gwen?
I'll pass for right now.
Oh, that's right. I'm out of order too. Michelle.
Mhm. What you're describing with creativity coaching, it sounds a lot like productivity coaching. Perhaps creativity is more like a subset of that. How do you see creativity coaching as more of a unique niche than straight productivity?
Yeah, that's a great question. And they do kind of blend. So when I first started creativity coaching, I thought I would be helping people like kind of go through a process and so they can generate better ideas and have come up with more creative ideas or just more ideas in general. But what I was noticing the pattern was that people pretty much had the ideas. They didn't really have a problem creating ideas. It's almost a problem more so of having too many ideas to work with and not being able to focus on what was most important, or not being able to kind of table something for later. If they had too many of ideas, and it was causing them frustration because they weren't achieving or kind of developing and finishing any of them. And so kind of just over time noticed that pattern, and what these people needed were like some different productivity systems. So there is a lot of just kind of straight up productivity coaching, but it's also through the lens of a creative process and working on creative projects. So there's some nuances to it, in my opinion, because it's not just about getting more stuff done in less time. It's about kind of really like examining why and what one is trying to accomplish, but also like dealing with a lot of like self-doubt and resistance and perfectionism. Some of this stuff might not be too different from other productivity coaching, but it's also there's more of an element about flexibility and this, and I guess just based on the research I've done and just what I've learned, my program, there's different layers to kind of look out for, like, and there's kind of paradoxical things about creativity and productivity where, hey, the more you work on something, actually maybe sometimes the worse it can be for your creativity and making progress on your creative work, right? There's these ideas of like idea incubation and development and things like that that aren't just straight up, hey, do more work, just keep going, add more time to what you're working on so you accomplish more. There's little nuances like that are a little different, but it is a lot on productivity. But to your point, for my own coaching, I noticed kind of the creative nuance to the productivity. It gave me a specific type of client that kind of resonated with that, perhaps more than just straight up productivity.
Wonderful. I'll take it back to me and then try and get the order right next time. I might have a bunch of questions about flow, and so I'm just curious, what's your understanding of flow in a work setting, and how much does it seep into your coaching?
Yeah, it seeps in a lot. A lot of times people that seek out coaching, in a lot of times they're high achievers, they're high performers.
Well, first of all, what is it?
Yeah. So flow is basically like the state of optimal experience. It's that feeling of being in the zone and being really absorbed in the moment, and your actions and awareness are kind of merged, and things are just happening, and it's effortless, but it's kind of the right thing. You're making progress and you're in that zone. So a lot of that research stems from studying athletes and artists and mountain climbers and things like that. But it can be applied at work. There are different experiences. Maybe you guys experience it when you're coaching people, you get in that state of flow where you're not really sure like what you're saying, where that's coming from, but you know it's the right thing at the right time, and you guys are in sync and you're really providing a lot of value. But at work, there's always an element there, and that's part of kind of the creativity, productivity coaching too, is kind of examining these elements of challenge and skill, right? So flow there's a formula basically is a product of the challenge level of the task at hand and then how skilled one is at that task. And to achieve flow, you need to be kind of at a high challenge, high skill level. If you're over challenged, then you feel anxious. If you don't have those skills, but there's a lot of challenge, you're feeling anxious, anxiety, you're stressed out, you're worried. If you're under challenged and over skilled, you're bored. If you're kind of low challenge, low skill, you're very, very bored and just kind of feel apathetic and maybe feel like you're atrophying a bit. So in the work context, a lot of times it's kind of coaching people to up the challenge, get out of their comfort zone a bit, because that can elevate them into a higher flow state. And that can make them feel more engaged and like what they're doing more, but it can also help them make progress more rapidly.
Perfect. I'm going to go back to my original order. No, that was perfect. I might have follow-ups, but it's perfect. I'm going to go back to my original order. So Michelle, you're next.
What books would you recommend, whether it be creativity coaching or flow or other aspects of your coaching?
Yeah, so the book Flow, I would recommend that. That's a great one. And I think, any coach, anyone that's drawn to coaching, I think they would really enjoy that book. It's helpful from kind of looking at your own life and your experiences, but also coaching other people that have to lead better, more fulfilling lives. Whatever the focus of your coaching is, I think there's opportunities to apply it to. So that's one. One of my other favorite books is by the same author called Creativity. It's like the flow. I can't remember the exact name, but it's like the discovery and invention of flow. But that really digs into like the creative personality and what that looks like and how it's very dynamic and complex and not as fixed as maybe some individuals might be that are less creative. That's a helpful lens. Another book I really like is The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. That's a really strong foundational book for time management, but also activating one's strengths and making better decisions and leading teams more effectively. And it's pretty practical and simple. It's kind of like a 5 or 6 pillar book, and it's a quick read. And then in terms of creativity, there's a lot of different books. In terms of like creative leadership, Creativity Inc. by the founder of Pixar, I think Catmull, Catmull, is a nice read. It's an interesting read to kind of think of like, what does that look like in creating teams and an organization that is conducive to creativity. There's a lot of other books I like but those might be more creativity specific and flow specific.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Gwen, did you think of a follow-up question?
Let's see now. I did have it. Going back to the issue of flow and creating flow in the workplace, a lot of the people that I work with are overwhelmed with meetings during the day and don't feel like they have a lot of control over their time at work. So how do you help people, or what recommendation or suggestions do you have for people to help them create an environment when they feel like they don't have a lot of control?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And yeah, that's that's always kind of the main struggle and challenge. A lot of my clients is a lot of their time is maybe out of their control. So you really have to kind of look at the design of their week and find those 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes where they can craft and kind of protect their time for those flow inducing activities. So, I mean, one activity is to really, and it takes a lot of assumption challenging is, hey, how much, like, you probably have more control over your schedule than you're enacting, and kind of work through like coaching them like, hey, like if you're really trying to do deep work, creative work, and flow inducing work, you'll never get there if you're only giving yourself kind of 15 or 30 minute time periods of work, right? You really kind of need 60 minutes at least, maybe 45. It depends on the person, but to really kind of get in that zone, you do need longer stretches of time. And so a lot of the coaching is around like finding that time and protecting that time. But also, you know, people seem to resonate with that manager maker concept and really trying to, and it's related, is like, how do you maybe kind of shift your meetings more so they happen on Thursday and Friday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday is more for your maker creativity time, and maybe Monday is either or. So that is pretty important for, you know, finding flow, but it really kind of comes down to how they're designing their time and protecting their time, because you can't get into flow if you're being distracted every 15 minutes. You're not going to do your best work. You're not going to have your biggest impact. And, you know, you're missing out on those flow opportunities.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to ask you sort of actually like a weird, out of left field philosophical question. Since the research on flow, and when I came to it, I was thinking totally about productivity. And then I was like, oh, this is research about happiness and fulfillment. That was really eye-opening for me. And I started to wonder whether or not I'm optimizing for the right things in my life. So I might ask a kind of a hypothetical question for you. Would you rather live 10 years longer or double the number of flow hours that you've had in your life and in your life in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. Probably, if it's either or, yeah, I think the flow activities would, I think I would pick that. Probably if I was living 10 years longer, I could probably fit in more flow too. But yeah, no, it is, flow is about performance, but it's also about well-being and happiness. And that's where it stemmed from. Like, it wasn't just a productivity or performance kind of issue. But it really kind of stems from, and I guess it depends on the person too. Like, in positive psychology, there's these different pillars of happiness and well-being.
Yeah.
So like flow and engagement's one of them. And depending on who you are, that might be the most fulfilling aspect of life. But there's other aspects like positive emotions. So some people, the quality of their life is more driven by the, feeling joy and whatnot. And there's meaning, right? So some people may never experience, they may not experience as much joy or engagement, but they feel like they're making an impact on the world somehow.
Yeah.
And then there's like relationships. Some people measure the quality of their life by the quality of their relationships. And then there's another type that they're driven by achievement. So it's called the PERMA model, like the orientations of happiness, PERMA.
Yeah.
So for myself and a lot of creativity people, I notice they're very driven by engagement and meaning, right? So they're, they don't care as much if they're super joyful or feeling positive all the time, but they want to be engaged and they want to make an impact. Whereas other people, they might just they're focused on achieving. They want to get this certification and now that one and this one, and that's fine. They're just different types of people. So that's that's just kind of something to think about maybe.
Perfect. Michelle?
What would be, say, your top 3 tips for developing creativity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one is you always have to kind of be striving to get out of your comfort zone, right? It kind of comes down to that flow model. Over time, as you're building up your skills, if you're not increasing the challenge, your creativity is going to kind of flatline or suffer. So in terms of coaching, a lot of times people need that extra nudge or help to get, bring on more challenge or get out of their comfort zone. But that's one. So always find ways to up the challenge, not just your skills. 2, it really also comes down to being deliberate about it. Like, so it's kind of a myth that creativity and creative people are kind of all over the place and they're just spontaneous, and whenever they get inspired by the muse, whatever it is, that's when they need to create. But it's more about being deliberate and just kind of showing up and kind of moving past the resistance and getting started, right? That's a lot of the challenges are just like, the biggest challenge usually is like getting started and just sitting down and kind of breaking things down a bit and not getting overwhelmed by like the big vision you have that's very complicated. And then 3, it's creativity is not just about what happens in your mind. Like, you need to be connecting with other people, building relationships, talking about ideas with people. It's very much involved with kind of your social network or your social connections, like the quality of the people you're connected with and the ideas you're connecting with. It enhances your ideas and your creativity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gwen, how about you? Yes, my question is, how do you create flow for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I get into flow a lot through music, and so that could be playing music, or a lot of times, at work, I do use music to kind of get in that state of mind. And I think because I've experienced flow a lot playing music and creating music, that's kind of a natural gateway for me to get into flow, even when I'm not doing music. So if I'm doing a task at work, I can find that certain kind of music that's going to hype me up, and I can kind of realize and make things a little bit more fun in a way. And that can kind of help me get into flow at work. So the other ways are, like, if you can make a game out of something, kind of detach yourself a little bit from it and kind of see it as a game and a challenge to overcome, and you're experimenting and you're trying things out and you're seeing if it works or not, and you're not super attached to the outcome, but you're more focused on learning and trying things out and getting out of your own comfort zone a bit. That helps. Just had another one I was going to share. I just lost it. Shoot. 3. I just lost it. That was a good one too. What was it? But yeah, so, and a lot of it though kind of comes down to also like knowing your strengths. So I don't know if you've ever taken like the Gallup Strengths Finder. There's another strengths assessment called the Values in Action. It's a positive psychology oriented assessment that's very similar, but it's free. But there's a lot of research behind it. So like knowing the kind of activities that play to my strengths and natural talents and interests, that is the easy pathway to get into flow. And knowing what energizes me and what drains me, like if I can craft more of my time in those energizing strength activities, and kind of delegate or craft my role a bit to get rid of the draining activities, then that's a really great way to get in the flow.
Okay, great, thanks.
Since we're pretty far in and no one's asked this question yet, but usually coaches want to know, what's your approach to getting new clients?
Yeah, so right now I'm kind of being pretty passive about it just because I'm trying to finish up my dissertation. so I'm being a little bit passive on it. I have like my leadership and higher price packages going. But in the past, when I was more active, I have a free ebook, how to become a creative badass, like the 9 steps to unlock your creative potential, whatever it's called, a 9-step process for elevating your creativity. So people seem to be pretty interested in that. I think it's simple and short and concise, but it's practical, and people can apply these ideas and see an impact on their life. So people might sign up on like my newsletter. I've posted in Reddit before, in different subreddits around productivity and kind of life improvement stuff, where, hey, you can sign up to get this free ebook that takes them into kind of an automated MailChimp funnel, advertising my coaching. People would sign up there, but also just from the coaching directory. I think people, just the nuance of, hey, if you're a creative person, you kind of identify as creative or you're doing creative things, I can help you with getting them done. Like that nuance, like I think certain clients would resonate. Oh yeah, I'm creative, I'll sign up for Jeff, versus a straight, like pure productivity person. So I think just that positioning attracts certain clients to me that identify as creative.
Yep.
But they also, they probably would get good help from other productivity coaches, but that identification of being creative attracts clients. And I think that might be true in like the leadership coaching too. It's just kind of like, oh, like he does that, but it's for creatives. It's maybe not too different if you were to compare what I do with others, but just that positioning and that identification, it's maybe a little more compelling or intriguing. Oh, what is this about? Like there's kind of an air of mystery around creativity and stuff too. So that might help. I don't know. But I have some systems in place and do email blasts, but Reddit, from my ebook, when I was more involved, I would get a lot of people signing up and kind of getting on through that. And I have like some automated like Twitter stuff. I use SmarterQ to refer coaches and to get people to sign up for me.
Right on. Michelle, any more questions from you?
Yes, I did have one. Do you see Coach.me as kind of a natural extension of what you're already doing in person, or are there some unique aspects of your creative coaching on Coach.me?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it kind of depends. I think it is a natural extension for the most part. It's been really helpful in the accountability side and checking in daily on progress on creative goals and helping people kind of reflect and tweak, in action versus maybe a more traditional in-person approach where you might not connect with them for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. So it's definitely very powerful in building momentum and progress and kind of keeping that accountability going for sure.
Great, thank you.
Gwen?
I'll pass.
That came back to me quickly. I like when the coaches throw out models or psychology theories that are working for them. So I mean, you've talked about flow in the challenge versus skill model. You threw out the PERMA model. Are there other coaching models or psychological concepts that that end up coming up a lot in the way you coach?
Yeah, so one for leadership, there's a model of transformational leadership that applies to, just being a good, inspirational, effective leader, and it translates well into leading creative endeavors. So that is a simple model. There's 4 components of it. So one is about like, how do you show up as a role model for like others, and that like you're inspiring others and the values you want to see in the workplace and the behaviors by actually doing them and enacting them as a role model. 2,
Yep.
it's about intellectual stimulation or challenge. So as a leader, like, are you challenging people to think differently, to be creative, to try new things out, to kind of own their own development and their own performance? Then the other parts are like idealized influence, which is kind of how do you show up in terms of your communications and charisma, kind of executive presence, maybe, if you will. Like, are you communicating in a way that inspires people, that helps people know where they're going, what the vision and what you're trying to achieve, what that looks like, and the goals. And then, which part did I leave out? And then individual consideration. That's really like, as a leader, it's not just leading a team or a group, but how do you lead and coach each individual on your team, like each one of your direct reports? Like, are you interacting with them? Are you giving them feedback, and are you coaching and mentoring them and helping them individually, like each unique individual person kind of become their best selves at work? So that's a model that is kind of applicable for the leadership approach. And then just some different like models of like leading change management, building, a lot of that stuff. A good model is Cotter's like model of change. It's like an 8-component thing. I would have to look it up to get all 8 of them.
Right. But that's it's there when you need it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Michelle, back around to you.
I'm wondering, is there an ideal client or type of client, or an ideal industry that you prefer to focus on?
Yeah. So I mean, the industries, it can be pretty broad, because I mean, most industries these days, they're trying to bring more innovation and creativity to whatever there is they're doing, because there's a lot of, the term's kind of overused, but there's a lot of disruption and business models are changing. So there's always leaders leading new initiatives or trying to figure stuff out on how to innovate. But, in the startup or tech world, or the creative marketing type world, though, that might be more applicable. I mean, IT is another kind of segment of, it's pretty broad, but those leaders seem to gravitate more towards coaching. In terms of client, though, my ideal client at this time, it is those leaders leading creative initiatives or leading creative teams. Maybe they're trying to manage a group of creative directors, have just focus on their team and have the team dynamics better. Or a lot of times the ideal client is, they have that, but they're also trying to do something new or creative in their organization. And it's, how do they navigate that? And that client probably would be a longer coaching kind of relationship, because there's a lot more to unpack and work through over time, versus someone that is just focused on themselves and their own creative project,
right.
Which, it could be a long-term thing, but depending on where they're at, that could be shorter because it's more narrow of a focus.
Great. Thank you.
Gwen?
I'll pass.
I think we're getting to the end of my questions too. Michelle, do you have any final questions?
No, I think that's it. So
perfect. Jeff,
Cool.
Thank you so much. This was
Yeah,
great.
thanks. Yeah, it was fun chatting with everyone.